attendees, thank you. Oh man, all right. And to all of the attendees, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Alrighty, so before I talk a lot about myself, let me start you all off with the basics here. Once again, my name is Izzy. I am 18 years old. I was born and raised in Brooklyn of New York. I am a current freshman at Barnard College of Columbia University, where I am planning on double majoring in computer science and women's gender and sexuality studies. Outside of school, I am a big girls in STEM advocate, and I'm also an aspiring / rising, depending on the day, entrepreneur. And I also happen to have 100 digits of pi memorized, literally for no reason, just I memorized them in 7th grade and I can still recite them. And every year on International Pi Day, March 14th, I post a video of myself reciting pi for the lols. Okay, so chapter 1 here, aspiring astrophysicist. I'm not sure who said that they liked. I can't see all of you guys now. Oh yes, hello. Your name, Sophia? Is that right? Yes, okay, awesome. Your name is no longer there, but yes, Sophia, you're in the right place. Okay, so chapter 1, aspiring astrophysicist. So I basically spent my entire childhood dreaming of becoming an astrophysicist when I grew up. And we're talking from when I was really young. Before I could even spell the word astrophysicist, I wanted to be one. So I first became mesmerized, hello, can I talk, by the projected cosmos at the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. If you guys have ever seen the Night at the Museum movies, it's the same museum from those. So I was about 8 years old when I had my first planetarium visit. And now, 9 years later, I was so lucky to be able to conduct astrophysics research within the museum's astrophysics department during last year as a senior in high school. So it's really cool that it went totally full circle there. And basically, without getting too into what my team was doing, because it's a lot of stuff going on there, but we basically spent 10 months writing code to analyze images of brown dwarfs. Now, if I'm saying brown dwarf to you and you have no idea what that is, no worries. A brown dwarf is basically a celestial object that it falls in between the mass of a planet and the mass of a star. So brown dwarfs kind of take up this middle area here. So studying them is super cool because we get to learn more information about both planets and stars. So my team created a whole code to analyze images of brown dwarfs. And what we were looking for was brown dwarf binaries. So a brown dwarf binary is when there's 2 brown dwarfs that orbit each other. And my team was actually able to discover a brown dwarf 66 light years away. And for reference, that's like going from the Earth to the sun 4,158 times. So if someone from the future ran up to little 8-year-old me and said that not only would I be able to conduct astrophysics research one day, but as a high schooler, and that I would also discover an object in space at 17 years old, there's literally no way I would have believed them. But what I was so lucky to have all throughout my childhood was my mom. And my mom infinitely supported me in my passion, encouraging and reminding me that I can be anything I want to be in the world of STEM and beyond. And growing up, there was never any question of, do I have what it takes to be an astrophysicist? I never thought about that at all. But because my mom believed in my abilities wholeheartedly, that made me believe in them too. So let me take y'all back a little bit. So first off, enter middle school. I know we got a middle schooler in the audience out here. All of my support is with you. Middle school is tough. It gets better, I promise. But for me, middle school was particularly tough. So we start off all right? You know, I'm 11, I get in there, 6th grade. I'm doing really well in school. It's actually the best I've ever done in school to this day. I was placed I somehow got number 1 on the high honor roll. That has not remained, but you know, I'm 11 years old, 6th grade, doing really well. And I'm doing well enough in 6th grade math to place into advanced math for 7th grade. And this is when things get a little difficult for poor Izzy over here. So we have our first test of the year. Basically, my whole class does really well. They basically ace the test. And I, over here, failed the first test. I got a 64 on it. And this was a huge bra moment for me because I had never in my life failed a test before, let alone a math test. And math was like my thing all throughout elementary school. So this was really, really shocking to me. And definitely just, I had never experienced anything like this before. But, I freak out for a second and then I'm like, all right, got it. I pretty quickly understand that, okay, 7th grade math, it's advanced math. It's going to be a little bit harder for me. I'm going to have to put in the work if I want to do well. What does putting in the work means? Well, in my case, I was lucky enough to be able to afford a math tutor, and therefore I advocated for myself and I got a math tutor. And this math tutor, her name was Wendy. Wendy is awesome. Wendy and I work really, really, really hard together all throughout the year, and I improve. And by the end of the year, I'm actually doing pretty well, and I managed to get a 94 on one of my tests. So, we really got up there. And overall in the class, I get an 86, which technically made me eligible to stick with advanced math for 8th grade. But Mr. O, we'll call him, my teacher, completely sucks and doesn't recognize all of the hard work I put in the whole year. Instead, what he does is he takes me out of the classroom and he starts talking to me. He's talking about me in comparison to the other students in my class, talking about my grades on tests compared to their grades. And then he says to me, I strongly encourage you to drop out of advanced math. And oh my God, y'all, this was just freaking heartbreaking because not only does he come in here and like crush my life, right? And basically tell me that I'm not smart enough to stick with this class, but there was no recollection of any of the work that I had put in. No good job, no yay for improvement. You went from a 64 to a 94. Oh my God, that's freaking awesome. No, none of that. All he could focus on was the grades and how I was by comparison, not as good test-wise as the other students in my class. And this was really, really hurtful for 12-year-old me. And that sounds pretty bad, but oh man, unfortunately, it does indeed get worse. So incoming, yay, part 2, advanced science, or in my case, lack thereof. So I find out, like I kid you not, this is really what happened to me in 7th grade. That was probably a Thursday that whole thing happened with my math teacher. Then on that next Friday, we're finding out who got into advanced science. And my class was really smart. Basically, everyone was in advanced math and they were all sticking with advanced math for 8th grade. And they were all really good at science too. And so was I. I'd done really well in science throughout the year. But on the advanced science placement test, I somehow failed it, I found out later. And this was the test that really determined whether or not you got into advanced science. So I'm waiting online. My entire homeroom is lined up on this Friday after school to get our letters saying, you've been placed into advanced science. I am the last one online. I have my hands outstretched, waiting for that envelope for my teacher. And boom. Sorry, Isabel, I don't seem to have a letter for you, is what my homeroom teacher said to me. So this, heart crushed again, but like times 1,000. This was really freaking horrible. I had the whole math incident before. Less than 24 hours later, I'm being told that, oh yeah, math isn't your thing. Oh, apparently neither is science. Oh wait, and you want to be an astrophysicist? Good luck, right? And this is what I'm thinking to myself, right? How the heck am I going to become an astrophysicist if I can't even do well in 7th grade math and science? And I'm walking around my middle school. I remember this like it was yesterday. I'm walking around middle school sobbing, like really having a moment here, questioning, this passion that I have for astrophysics, walking around being like, well, what am I going to do now, right? And this goes on for a little while until something in me changed. Something in me was able to bring me out of this horror that I had found myself in when I remembered my passion. I don't want to go there quite yet, but I remembered in these moments of, really feeling as though my whole world was caving in, that I wasn't in these math and science classes for the sake of getting the highest grades in the class. I didn't care about that at all. I was taking them because I genuinely loved math and science. I was taking them because I wanted to be an astrophysicist. And I knew that math and science went into becoming an astrophysicist. And today, it's so crazy that that girl walking around her middle school questioning if she was smart enough to become an astrophysicist was the same girl who was able to discover an object in space only about 5 years later. And this, folks, right here is the power of your passion. It is your passion that tells you that, yes, you are smart enough to do STEM, that, yes, you are smart enough to become an astrophysicist. Yes, you are brave and strong and capable and absolutely have the power to change the world. And I want to bring it back to my mom for a second, because throughout my entire childhood, my mom was there supporting me always, always, always. And my mom, she never once questioned my abilities to become an astrophysicist, even on that Friday when I came home from school completely destroyed from this basically existential crisis I had had. Instead of, taking that L and embracing it, being like, okay, you know what, maybe math and science isn't your thing, that didn't matter at all. Those grades, those no's from my teacher, pushed them right aside. And instead, she vocally cheered me on with this unshakable confidence in my abilities to do STEM and to become an astrophysicist. And then during my junior year of high school, my mom passed away following a 14-year battle with stage 4 breast cancer. And obviously, as you can all imagine, this was a huge turning point in my life, but especially in, the space I wanted to hold in the STEM community, or the space that I wanted to take up in general, and, who am I going to be now? And so this is when things start to shift in my STEM journey. And this is what I like to call Chapter 2, Girls and STEM Advocate. So after my mom passed away, I really had this whole kind of awakening. And I was able to recognize the privilege of growing up with a powerful woman role model who always encouraged me to pursue STEM, even when my teachers of the world was telling me not to. And I decided then that I wanted to be a role model or a friend or a cheerleader for girls in STEM worldwide, just like my mom always was for me. And so my way of doing that was to start proudly sharing my passion, hoping that in the process of doing so, I could inspire more girls to explore the wonders of STEM. And so here are the main ways that I got started. Number one, with workshops. So I began volunteering and hosting various in-person workshops to expose youth, and particularly girls, to STEM. So I taught workshops on a bunch of different, various cool science topics such as gravity and Newton's third law. And I even taught a bunch of students from my elementary school how to build their own model solar systems. So throughout the course of a couple months, I taught about 250 youth across New York City, helped build 30 plus model solar systems, and in the process was interviewed by some local news outlets. Then in comes February 11th. So for context here, this is what I was up to during my senior year of high school, and I'm now a freshman at Barnard, as I said previously. So February 11th. So I find out, I don't know if you guys are familiar with February 11th, but I find out about a week before February 11th that February 11th was the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So I'm finding this out about a week before, and I'm thinking to myself, hold up, if me, big STEM girl over here my whole life has never heard of this day, there's no way the majority of my high school has heard of it, or the world for that matter has heard of it either. So what am I going to do about that? And I knew I had to do something. So what I decided to do was organize and lead a day of events at my high school to celebrate this really awesome day. So what I did was I put together a team of science ambassadors, as I call them, which were really just a bunch of girls I gathered from throughout my high school that I knew liked science or STEM. And I said, all right, guys, we're all going to pull up in pink. Pink is my favorite color. And we're going to hand out different facts about women in STEM. So really women in science, but women in STEM in general. So throughout that day, we handed out over 3,000 slips all throughout my high school, celebrating both celebrating, talking with facts about different women throughout scientific history, but also talking about some of these really unfortunate statistics that still pertain in the STEM community today. And I also created a presentation that was shown in all math and science classes that focused on 3 past scientific pioneers 2 current science or STEM innovators, and 1 future scientist or science advocate. And that was you, the person who was watching this presentation. So then I went into ways in which students could get involved in the STEM community at my high school, and more broadly, the amazing STEM community, particularly the girls in STEM community that exists now, is really budding on social media and stuff today. So overall, the science ambassadors and I were able to reach about 2,700 plus students, faculty, and administration, and then we're featured in our school bulletin. So that was sent out to parents, and I'm not sure the numbers for that, but I'm sure that a lot of parents thought that this was a really cool day that LaGuardia, my high school, was celebrating. Oh yeah, I went to LaGuardia High School. That is a performing arts high school. If y'all know Timothy Chalamet, he went there. Just quick flex. Moving on. Okay, so lastly, we have First Empower, or lastly of this slide rather, we have First Empower, which is a beta company that I co-founded with a couple of my friends at the beginning of spring, that was dedicated to empowering young girls through STEM. So we created a website, and we built a small little team, and throughout quarantine, we created 9 DIY STEMtivities, which were basically online DIY different STEM projects that you could do with materials at your home, just materials that you probably already had, but was a way for students and, particularly girls about ages 6 to 10 to get some hands-on science action going. So we had some really cool experiments. We did ones where you could make invisible ink with lemon juice. We did ones where we learned all about different simple machines, and basically each STEMtivity was posted on our website completely free of charge. And it was we had an introduction, key terms, essential questions, obviously the directions to enact the experiment, but then our personal touch was that each DIY STEMtivity came with a video in which one of the members of the First Empower team would explain the science and significance behind what students were doing. And that was the closest we could get to having that girl-on-girl mentorship that we wanted to be having in real life, but obviously we couldn't because of the pandemic. And so in about 2 weeks, we were able to garner over 1,400 views on our website, and we're featured in some various organizations and publications, including Forbes, which, quick flex once again, I was actually interviewed for something completely different for Forbes, but I made sure to get First Empower in there. So, manifesting the future of FE out here. So this is all to say, yeah, okay, whatever I've been up to, it's cool, I guess, right? But this is only the beginning. I very much envision a world where girls are exposed to STEM from a young age and guided by women role models all throughout their K through 12 education. I envision an inclusive STEM community that welcomes women and girls of all races, abilities, sexual orientations, and socioeconomic backgrounds to use their STEM superpowers to change the world. This is the vision that I plan on spending my entire life making a reality, and I sincerely hope that each and every single one of you will join me. So as we're getting to the end here, I really want to stress that STEM is a tool to create change. We need an inclusive STEM community so that we can build inclusive and innovative products, technologies, services, and businesses. So in other words, it is through STEM that we can build a more inclusive world. STEM, as I said previously, is a superpower. So the question I want to leave you all today with is, how are you going to use STEM to change the world? And that brings us to the end here. So once again, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. These are my socials linked here. I am normally pretty active on Instagram, very busy these days with school, but trying to get more active on there. So if you guys have any, well, we're gonna do a Q&A after this, which is pulling up right over here. If that wants to load, that would be cute. But yes, please make sure to follow me on Instagram at Izzy Lapidus. And if you guys are on LinkedIn, you can connect with me down there. And if you want to schedule a mentoring call, which I love to do those, where you can tell me about your STEM story or whatever your interests are, and I can try to provide any of my own advice or insight. My email is linked right there. So just go ahead and shoot me an email and I'll respond as soon as I can.
Yeah, wow, thank you for that amazing talk. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or just, come on microphone. Um, I do have a ton of questions because you are super inspiring and um, really motivating, I think, as well. I think, um, yeah. So if anyone has questions, you can just interrupt me or something like that. I don't want to take up all the question time. Um, but yeah, I guess one of the questions you have on here, I'll ask it. Why CS? Why women's studies? I'm personally interested in computer science. I've been taking computer science classes. I like doing projects. I'm not really sure if it's what I want to do, like in college and beyond. And obviously, like working with it, where I'm founding Innoverge, I'm very much interested in um, and passionate about increasing diversity in STEM fields and increasing representation, not only in STEM fields, but I guess like in kind of all fields for, like you said, like a greater and more inclusive world. So yeah, what kind of led you to choose that?
Yeah, so thank you. That was a beautiful little explanation you just gave there. And so I think that the reason, so I'm honestly still, figuring things out. As of right now, the plan is to do this double major with computer science and women's gender and sexuality studies, but who knows what I'll be saying by the time I'm a senior, right? But what ultimately got me to switch my focus from, I planned to, obviously, you guys can probably assume, becoming an astrophysicist and majoring in astrophysics, but I decided that I wanted to pursue a major in computer science, one for the technicalities of it. I truly believe that coding is just as important a language as any other, second language that we be taught in schools. Everything is so technology oriented right now. We can see that so clearly living through this pandemic, right? We would not be able to communicate with our loved ones that, we probably won't be able to see, right, on as much as we'd like to, or our friends from school if it wasn't for technology. And to really have that understanding of how this works, how is it that we are able to even have these systems. I'm always someone that wants to know why things work the way that they do. So I think the technicalities of having that understanding so that I can communicate on that same level that, the people behind Instagram or Snapchat or any of these social media platforms have been able to create, that was really appealing to me. But I think more broadly, I want to be a part of the changing statistics of women getting CS degrees. And what really made me think that computer science is something I'd like to major in is after I attended Code with Clossy this summer, which was my first time I've coded before, but I never really had an experience where I felt like I was a part of the community. I took a coding class in summer of 2018. I was one of two girls in the entire class. I guess I was 15 or 16 at the time, and there was boys in the class that were about 12 or 13. It was like I was super out of place there. We had Fortnite breaks a part of our schedule. I was like, what the heck am I doing here? When it wasn't until I was in COVID Classy where I was in a community of all girls or non-binary folks where I was like, you know what, coding is awesome. And it's because I haven't had these great experiences that has made me not consider it a career path for me. So it was definitely in Code with Classy where I just loved the support that I got from all these other CS girls. And I think that's something that's so cool about the girls in STEM community is that it's so close knit and that every person I feel like wants to hype each other up and be there for each other and to just be that role model, be that girl who's able to get that computer science degree to show all these other girls that yes, it's possible. That's enough for me to want to get one. So it's really ultimately much bigger than me. We learned in my Code with Class, we watched this documentary called Code Debugging the Gender Gap, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I was literally watching, scribbling down. I have like 5 pages of notes from like 2 minutes worth of watching. It is so informative and moving and just powerful in general. And it showed this whole kind of breakdown of it's women getting CS degrees that goes into becoming women software engineers that goes into becoming women hardware engineers that blah blah blah. You get all the way to the end and you have female founders. and that there's this pipeline that if you're able to get into computer science, right, that it's difficult, but that it's one way in which we can also, you know, make the business world a less male dominated place. So I think that computer science at the end of the day is a really important tool, and even if I don't end up majoring in it, I definitely still want to be taking CS classes and have that insight.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Yeah, definitely I'll add that documentary to my watch list.
Yes,
Um,
I like definitely. It's really
yeah, yeah, totally agree. Like yeah, sorry. Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah. What was it like interning at the Hayden Planetarium? It's so close that I always mean to go, but I haven't ended up going down there
do
yet.
you live in New York?
I'm 40 minutes outside of the city, so
Oh,
not too
awesome.
far.
Yeah, well, the museum is awesome. It's my favorite museum. So in general, it was really awesome to just get to spend. I spent like 5 hours there a week throughout my senior year before COVID was a thing. And it was a really cool experience. It was, you know, I went, as I said, to a performing arts high school or an arts high school in general. So I didn't have any friends at school that wanted to become astrophysicists or even remotely interested in astronomy. I had some STEM girlfriends, but particularly astronomy, it was so cool to be in this cohort of students. So basically I was in a program called SHRIMP, which stands for the Science Research Mentoring Program. So within that, there's different tracks. There was the physical science track and the life science track. So there were about 40 students in the life sciences track and 20 students in the physical science track. And all 20 of those students, including me, we were all total nerds about space. So it was fun to just get to talk to them just being a part of the program in general was really cool. But my mentor was a young woman named Johanna Voss. And I really wanted to conduct research under a woman, especially a young woman. It was really cool to just, you know, a lot of times so I was doing this research with two other members of my team. There were two boys that were juniors in high school, and sometimes they would come late. So it would just be me and Johanna, and I would just ask her all these questions. I was basically just like interviewing her. I was like, so like, you know, just I would be like, so what's like a daily walkthrough of your life as an astrophysicist? And, you know, it was cool to even get to see like her desk. You know, what does the desk of an astrophysicist look like? She had this notebook where she would just scribble different like calculations or ideas that she had. And, you know, she would tell me how every morning what she does is she starts her day by going on to, you know, different astronomy journals and just catching up with any new findings. And it was just really cool to learn about what it's like to be actually a part of, you know, this adult scientific community. And I'd say that was definitely, you know, doing the research itself was obviously awesome, but just to have this inner look on like, what does it look like to be a scientist? As the very, you know, inquisitive person and curious person that I am, that was definitely really cool. And we also, one more thing about the planetarium, and then yes, Connor, we did get to go into the planetarium when no one else was there. We got our own private space shows for us. It was literally so elite, like it was awesome. We got to lie down in the middle because no one would be there. And it wouldn't be Johanna, but a different astronomer would like drive it, which is what they say when they're like, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever been to a planetarium, but you know, you got this dome and there's this projected cosmos, but like someone has to like make it so that this is so hard to explain for some reason, but someone has to make it so that, you know, as the viewer, they can see the different, why am I having so much trouble explaining this? You know, make it so that it feels like you're floating in the universe and moving around the universe. And it was just really cool to have our own private showings of that, obviously. And Connor, it looked like you had a question before. Yes.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for this absolutely wonderful presentation, this talk. It was a really powerful story. So thank you for sharing it. And I kind of wanted to ask, I mean, obviously you've had your fair share of challenges at getting to where you want and finding where that passion is and then pursuing it. But especially in the year of 2020 when everything is going haywire and it's hard to sometimes keep in mind, you know, what we're working towards. I see this question on the slide of what keeps you motivated, and I'm kind of drawn to it because I think that that's a question everybody needs an answer to right now in this crazy year. So yeah, I guess my question is, we obviously saw throughout your life that a large part was your mom. So I wonder, like, including that, what else keeps you motivated and what else keeps you going when you feel like that, like all hope is lost?
Yeah, that is a really, really good question. And I mean, I've had, for every talk I give, I have like a similar slides that I'll use. And so this slide is one from before, or kind of before I started actually being in school. And I would say that throughout quarantine, what kept me, when I say quarantine, I mean kind of up until September, which was when for me, at least things changed because I started college. And I would say throughout quarantine, what really kept me going was that I was just in this like iteration mode and just this constant reflection and thinking mode. And it was really over quarantine that I began to really get into, what is it that I want to do with my life? How is it that I can take my story and use it to inspire others? And it was kind of just like a lot of the work that I was doing was just really thinking about myself, but in a way that was like, what's the bigger picture here? And I think now when I answer this question, it's been tough. This is the first talk I've given in a couple of weeks because it has been really difficult for me to be in college at home. It's had a huge, huge effect on my mental health. But ultimately what keeps me going is knowing that this moment that we're in right now is not forever and that there is an end to it. And that all of this thinking and this reflecting in these hard times that are happening to us right now, there's always a silver lining to them. And at least for me, right, I started giving these talks at the, in July. And I've dreamed of, for at least the past couple of months, dreamed of being able to be given the platform to share my story with people. And that for me has been such an incredible outcome of this online world that, I now get to connect with people from all over the country, all over the world, and be the person that can, share my story in hopes that it's able to inspire them. So I think that, going back to what motivates me, it's really thinking of like, what can I do? What keeps me going is knowing that I'll be able to have an impact on someone else. I don't really believe in doing things for the sake of myself. I say that like, what's the point of learning something and keeping that knowledge to yourself? Why would you want that? It's to share it with the world and to help influence and change other people's perspectives. So I think that I try to have this really just kind of bird's eye view, and I'm able to kind of take myself out of the picture here and just be like, all right, stuff is tough right now, but we see that life goes on. We see that there is a world in which all of these dreams I have of making the STEM community a more inclusive place, they're possible, and we just have to keep going. And knowing that, life would be boring if it was all easy, right? And knowing that like there are gonna be times that suck and really hard. I've experienced a fair share of them, but that those have informed the work that I want to do now so much. And even in the moments when it feels like I don't have that deeper understanding, I know that give me a couple weeks or maybe a couple months and I'll be able to put those hard moments kind of into perspective and find the ways in which those can now help inform the work I hope to do in the future. That was a really like roundabout answer, but hopefully there was something that you were able to gain from that. And also if there's any like questions that like, I don't know, I mean, this is not, I feel like we're all getting along pretty well here, but if for some reason you're not comfortable asking something, like please shoot me a DM. And I would love to talk to any of you guys more in depth and more about if it's a more personal question. Like I really am here to have that conversation with you.
So this is a more basic question, but since I am a senior going through the college app process, I was wondering how your college app process was and why you chose Barnard and how you just narrowed down that list and just how your application process was.
Yeah, totally. So I'll be really honest with you guys. I applied to Barnard, had zero interest in going to Barnard. I am from New York City. I was like, why the heck would I want to be in New York City for another 4 years? I didn't really even know that much about Barnard. I had a school that I applied early to that every person told me I was going to get into, including my college counselor, who was an alum of the school. And I get rejected. I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to move on. Then I had a different school that I wanted to go to. It was a school that my mom went to. And I really had this whole kind of plan in my head that, you know, I'd be going to the same college as her. That's the best way I could honor her and her legacy. And then I get waitlisted. I'm like, all right, what the heck? Okay, I am not a maybe, bye. And then we have Barnard over here, who slowly emerged herself to me. And basically everyone that I am friends with wanted me to go to Barnard. Everyone thought that Barnard was perfect for me. And for some reason, I just it wasn't really on my radar too much. But then more over quarantine, you know, I'm starting to narrow. Basically, I applied to 16 schools. I think I was narrowing it down between 5 schools at the end. I was kind of considering a couple of them, but really what got me is I started, you know, I was on actually the phone with the founders of First Empower, the co-founders, and all of them were very, very Team Barnard. And I hadn't quite, you know, realized how, and I'll get into why I keep saying it's so perfect for me. I'll get to that in a second. But I wasn't quite there, but I'm starting to have this conversation with my friends, and, you know, I don't even remember what they're saying to me, but it got me to a point where I'm starting to look at Barnard's website. I'm just kind of remember looking at Barnard's website and just really resonating with a lot of the words that were on it. And what particularly stood out to me was Barnard's mission statement, which I still, from the first time I read it, had it memorized, and all these months later, I still know it, which is Barnard's mission is to amplify women's power to change the world. And I read on the website right before that, the actual sentence was that there's no better time in history to attend a college whose sole mission is to amplify women's power to change the world. And I remember reading that and just feeling like there was not a single other mission statement from any college that stood out to me in that way. It felt like something that I could have written myself in another world. And then I'm kind of looking more, you know, and then I'm kind of remembering why were the reasons I applied to Barnard in the first place. And one of the main reasons was that, you know, forget me being annoying, being like, whatever, Barnard, that's not true. Obviously, when I applied to Barnard, I was like, all right, this is a really awesome school, and here's why. And one of the main things that I loved about Barnard was the Athena Center for Leadership, which is something that I hadn't seen at other schools. And basically, it's a whole center on Barnard's campus, which unfortunately we're online, so I haven't been able to check out in person. But I'm now actually a part of one of the programs that the Athena Center is doing. Basically, the Athena Center's whole thing is, you know, leadership, whether that be political, whether that be, you know, of a nonprofit or a business of some capacity. Just how can we build the leaders of tomorrow, the women leaders of tomorrow. And just Barnard's really entire vibe is really dope, empowered women, really passionate about whatever the heck they're passionate about. A lot of mixed passions, but what I think everyone really cares about is just building a better world in some capacity and being change makers. And I'm really, really excited to actually get on campus and get that feel of, you know, what does it feel like to go to a college where you're surrounded by people that in some way or another have a very similar vision in life. And yeah, those are kind of the biggest reasons of why I ultimately chose Barnard.
I have another question. Unless Kaveri, I know you haven't answered asked a question yet, so you have priority if you do have one. But something that I'm sure you've struggled with maybe, and I'm struggling a lot with, is kind of like imposter syndrome. I have this big feeling of like, oh, I don't really belong. Oh, I'm not really that good at it. I don't think I can like really make it. Like I'm just kind of trying to get by. So I wonder if you have any like tips or any stories for kind of how to deal with that, and maybe if you personally have kind of overcome that or are still working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I first want to say that imposter syndrome is so normal. Literally every person has experienced it in some capacity. Even the people that probably look like they're the most confident person in the room, I promise you that some part of them is thinking like, oh man, like I don't know about this at some point in life. I think for me, I've experienced imposter syndrome in different spheres. So like I think that within the STEM community, you know, what helped me not experience it to the fullest extent was that I wasn't really surrounded by that many STEM people, right? I went to high school, as I said, for or I haven't actually said this, but I went to high school for acting, and then I also went to middle school for acting. So I've always been surrounded by people that don't have these interests in STEM, to a point where it wasn't until I went to a class at Harvard this summer for my senior year, where I was in a really difficult astronomy class. There were about 50 people in the class. 4 of them were girls. So this was the first time I was ever in a legitimate astronomy class, 2, the first time I was ever like outnumbered for being a girl, but now the mixture of being a girl in STEM, like it was really the first time where that experience was really amplified to me. And in my class, I was so excited to be there. So I sat at the front of the classroom every single day. I had my notes out. I would always be writing notes. I had a part in the back of my notebook where I'd ask questions or like write down questions that I didn't want to raise my hand because I didn't want to like stall the whole class. And basically, I learned right before the midterm that there was this whole cohort. Oh my God, can I talk? This whole group of guys in my class that would actually look to me to see if they should be taking notes or not. And that I was kind of the person that like knew what she was doing, which I like didn't think of myself as at all. And then right before the test, all of these guys are like gathered around me, begging me to help them study. I, of course, had made several review sheets. And then there was one boy who I was working with in particular that actually asked me to study, previously, and we had spent a couple hours working together. And this was the boy that sat next to me in class, who was on his phone while I was writing down notes. And so right before the test, I helped him out, and we worked for a while studying. And then we got back our tests, and I got a 98 on it, and he got a 100. And I was like, okay, right off the bat, I'm like, all right, I mean, LOL, because like you probably would have not done nearly as well without my help. But I wasn't really I didn't really think much of it right off the bat. But then he we're standing next to each other, and he's like, so like, what'd you get on your test? And I show him that I got a 98, and he laughs and goes, well, you know that I'm smarter than you. And this was the first time where I literally, all of your faces, like me too, like literally, no, that has never happened to me. And I'm standing there like stunned. I'm like, wait, like literally like what? Like you do recognize that like you literally did not pay attention for 3.5 weeks here and probably would have failed if I hadn't gone out of my way to help you study. Like it was so many things that were wrong about the situation that it was really hard for me to even like process. But what it was really hurtful. And I had really never felt as degraded in my life as I did in that moment. And it stuck with me. That happened over 2 years now, right? Yeah, I guess over 2 years now. And I see that moment like it happened yesterday. And it really showed me that one, I am so lucky that I didn't have an experience like that until I had already built up this immense confidence in my abilities. But, I'm thinking and I'm like, wow, this is a freaking problem. If this boy really thinks that he is smarter than me because he got 2 points higher than me after like he's very well aware that he didn't study at all and like was not paying attention in class at all, that like this was not a question of intelligence on the bat. It was probably luck that he was able to do that well, right? And like with my help that he was able to do that well. It just showed me that like that is going to be something I'm going to have to get used to experiencing, especially when I, are in these male dominated environments. And as you guys can probably tell, I'm not really about that. I'm literally going to an all girls college, right? So like I'm doing my best right now before it becomes like the real world to be surrounded by girls that will hype me up. And so to kind of get back to the question of like, what do you do about imposter syndrome? One, recognize that like, that is just a part of life. And that is a part of being in environments where some part of you is not the domination of the room, right? but to find the people that will give you that external support if you're unable to give it to yourself always. And to remember that what you're doing is always for a reason that is bigger than whatever, any external feeling of no could be, right? If you chose to show up in a space, it's because something in you said yes to being there. And that yes will always be so much more important than any no. And I can attest to that from both of those teachers. Remember back in, 7th grade, both of those teachers being like, yeet, you can't do math and science. And if I had let those feelings take over my life, rather than if I let those feelings, let those no's determine, said yes to them, embrace them, I would so not be where I am today, right? So finding that way of still having that yes to yourself, knowing that there will be no's and there will be people that don't believe in you and there will be people that make you feel like shit throughout your life. But if you're able to go back to why you're doing this in the first place, why are you in this space? What is bringing you there? Remember that passion that I talked about previously, that will always, always, always be so much stronger than any of that other bullshit that you will inevitably experience. Pardon my language, but that is the truth.
I think it's quite justified. Well, we are reaching the end of time, so I guess she did share her socials if you do have more questions. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been awesome to listen to you.
So much fun. Yes, guys, please make sure to follow me on Instagram or connect with me on LinkedIn. Definitely message me any you take a W in school, do well on a test, get something cool, let me know. Always there to hype you guys up. And yeah, thank you guys so much for giving me the floor tonight or today, wherever you are.
Yeah, it was so awesome. Yeah, is it all right? I recorded it. Is it all right if we post this on YouTube?
Yes, totally. And please just send me it whenever you do that.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
So, yeah,
awesome.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Izzy.
Bye, guys.
Awesome. And yeah, see you all some other time.